to D&D Beyond. I am very excited to welcome back our friend Eugenio Vargas because today we are going to talk about some of the best things to put in your bag of tricks to be a rogue. And one of my favorite rogues, visitor to the channel, DM extraordinaire, streamer, tabletop creator, theater artist. How you doing today, Eugenio?
I'm so good. It's so refreshing to be referred to as something other than a bard, so thanks for that.
I mean, we carry the bards with us, I feel,
Of
internally
course.
at
No,
all
no, there's nothing wrong
times.
with being a bard, to be very clear before I start getting tagged on Twitter. Let me just say, being a bard is great. Just, a little change. I love it.
You talked with me, it was all of last summer, I think, about the Phantom
God,
Rogue,
was it?
one of the most fun subclasses. Don't do the math. Time is a weird soup. But that was, well, it's always good to talk to you, but that was my excuse for you being the perfect fit to talk about best magic items in Dungeons and Dragons for your rogue. And we are heavily inspired by the article that you can find on dndbeyond.com right now. The link is running through chat or down in the comments, and it is a full list of best magic items for rogues by the wonderful Damon Cook. So let's jump right into that list. Eugenio, what
Yeah.
is the first magic item from our list of favorites that jumped out at you as a yes, must add this to the rogue toolkit?
Yeah, so as I looked through the list and then as I sort of just thought about magic items for rogues myself, it's sort of, as we'll see, I think, it's kind of interesting because rogues are built to be so extraordinarily good at the things that they do, right? They're not just good at dexterity saves, they get evasion. Right, so even better. They're not just good at dealing damage; they get handfuls of sneak attack dice. Right, so improving it with magic items is sort of is an interesting journey. Like you have to really sort of find specific ways that you aren't just like avoiding a dice roll for something that probably like had a plus 15 modifier anyway. Anyway, we're gonna see that. But my first thing on from our list here, which is a pretty good list, but the first one that really caught my eye is the Bracer of Flying Daggers. Um,
Ooh.
yeah, and the thing, so I love the Razor Flying Daggers. I believe, if I remember correctly, sort of was I don't remember chicken and egg. I don't know which came first, right? But is featured as a weapon that Jarlaxle Banray has, both in some of the Driss novels and I think maybe also in Waterdeep Dragon Heist.
I
I
want
believe
to say
might
that
be
you're
where.
correct. We have
Yeah.
I've just pulled it up on D&D Beyond. The Bracer of Flying
Oh, good.
Daggers is featured in Waterdeep Dragon Heist. That is
Great.
the source for its entry into 5th edition. But tell me a little bit about it, please, Eugenio.
Yeah, so I'm a big Jarlaxle fan in general, so like anything that he has I think is cool. That feather in his hat is also very cool. But the idea with these bracers is that they hide an infinite store of magical daggers within them. So as an action, you can grab 2 daggers out of them and throw them, which just flavor-wise is cool. I mean, that's awesome. I grab my forearms and suddenly I have daggers. But also, and this article points out this point, the thing that's really great about rogues, right? So rogues, as I already said, do a ton of damage because of sneak attack. But more often than not, rogues get only one shot at it per turn. If they're if they're a
Mm.
swashbuckler or something else that like has ways that they don't end up having to use their bonus action, then maybe they get 2. But they got to use their action and their bonus action to get that. So anything that increases your likelihood of hitting for rogue is great because that means more chance at actually hitting that sneak attack. There's little that is more disappointing for a rogue, except maybe like triggering a trap, right? Than not getting to sneak attack in a round. So the thing about the Bracer of Flying Daggers is that you're able to use your action specifically to pull 2 daggers and throw them. So this item basically gives rogues multi-attack with daggers, right? 2 attacks per round with their action. So cool flavor, twice as many rolls to try and hit your sneak attack. Did I mention it's cool?
I love that you picked this because this was also one of my favorites because it's one on this that I have used actually. And it was one of those like, I feel very vindicated because I was like, this feels like an excellent match. I don't know if the math works. And yes, it does actually. Because it does feel like, if you hit on the first one, then cool, you've got an extra dagger attack. It's not that powerful, fine.
Right.
But like, it does mean more chances to avoid that, like, all right, get them next time feeling. And it's just got so much fun flavor. Infinite,
Does.
magically pulled out. Like, it has very X-Men vibes for me personally. I'm pulling out psychic knives. Let's go.
Yeah,
But in
yes.
this case, yeah, they I think it is a delightful one. So this one is rare and requires attunement. So not the
Yes.
easiest to find, not the hardest,
Yeah.
which I think is pretty valid.
I will say the only I don't know that it's a downside, right? But thing to keep an eye on if you are a very melee rogue, right? If it's important for some other reason that you're really within 5 feet, this may not be the best item for you because the only catch about those 2 dagger attacks with your action is that they explicitly have to be ranged. So if you're a close quarters rogue and you're fighting in melee range, you're going to have disadvantage on all these dagger attacks, right? Now, look, your mileage may vary, your DM may rule otherwise because you're grabbing a dagger and stabbing, and that's a thing a dagger can do, blah, 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 right? That's fine. But as written, these are meant to be ranged attacks because you're sort of throwing, right? So a thing to consider.
If you want to homebrew the bracer of stabbing daggers, I feel like that would
There
be
you go. There you go.
the follow-up item.
It's
I
exactly the
love
same.
that.
It is not different. It just has a little label maker thing that says stabbing above daggers.
Yes. And they fall out of the sky if you try to fling them. Like they have a weird magical gravity that
Yes.
kicks in where they just go clunk onto the pebbles, and you're like, "Ooh, wrong bracer."
Oh, yeah.
For my first pick on this one, I again had to go to the comic book well, because I'm me, but also because I just think this is really cool, and I have never used this one in a game. The Cloak of Arachnida is how I'm gonna go
Yeah.
with this. It could be Arachnida, but let's pull this one up. Um, because this one is very, very fun. It's a fine garment made of black silk interwoven with faint silvery threads. While wearing it, you gain the following benefits: resistance to poison damage, dish it out, don't have to take it. Climbing
Love.
speed equal to your walking speed, very convenient. Oh, and you can move up, down, and across vertical surfaces and upside down along ceilings while leaving your hands free. I would already be in at this point. This would be enough for me, but
Yeah.
oh, you also can't be caught in webs of any sort. You can move through webs as if they were difficult terrain. It's just a little inconvenient. And you have a larger version of the web spell that you can cast more or less once per day, with a save of DC 13 against it, and you can fill a whole area with spider webs. You have a magical spider cloak that lets you walk on walls and trap people. I love this. Why does it
Yeah.
exist? Who made it? Is it cursed? I have questions, but I know that I want one.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, even just the spider climb that leaves your hands free to do stuff while you're on the wall and ceiling. Like even without the other stuff, that's fun and exciting.
I also, and I personally appreciate, you could house rule whatever appearance you want for this, but I love that they're like black silk with silvery threads. Picture it, you got it. It's just a nice starting point. And I feel like our first clue to whoever the mysterious tapestry weaver is behind these things. Have you
Agreed.
used one of these or run into? Do you have a good idea for how you would put one of these into play?
I have not run into one, but I do have ideas. The article talks about sort of sneaking up above your captors and then just like blasting a web down on them, and that's a delightful use just right there. Web is such I it's a spell that I always wish I used more in my caster
Mm,
characters. Right, there are some spells that like I hesitate to use because particularly when combats are like 3 rounds long, right? Like it's hard to justify spending a whole action doing something like web, particularly as a rogue, right? When we just talked about action economy is so tight. But what I
yeah.
love about this is it gives, I mean, yes, it is absolutely useful in combat, right? If you're able to give up that first round, maybe there's a ton of enemies that you're fighting, but it also gives the rogue a little taste of spellcasting in situations that I think web shines, which is roleplay, exploration, non-combat situations, right? And those are the situations where rogues have amazing skills, right? So if you're doing ability checks, you're probably good, but they don't have a bunch of really like off the well, I guess depending on your subclass, but in general, they don't have a bunch of bananas off the wall sort of situations where this type of magic would work in their features. So this is another fun little addition to their toolkit. So the next one, speaking, I guess maybe it should be paired with this cloak, since the cloak gives you resistance to poison damage. Because my next item, and I thought it was really interesting that that the author put this on the list, but is poison. Obviously, I play Kent on Rivals Water DPS. The Poisoner feat. He is he used to be an archaeologist who specialized in studying the ruins of Talolan temples. She's the goddess of disease and poison. So that is a thing for him. Uh, but poison is such an easily forgotten tool that can be a lot of fun for any class, of course, but in particular for rogues for a lot of reasons. The article points out that particular some types of rogues in particular are going to be really good at convincing folks to drink a glass of a cup. I want a fancy word, a goblet of wine that they're handed with truth serum in it, or things like that. So I do love that. I love the idea that we're not just talking about damage poisons, but we're talking about the rogue in particular, probably like a charisma rogue, somebody that's got lots of deception and persuasion and that sort of stuff. Maybe a mastermind, maybe an inquisitor. Would be able to slip poisons into things, non-wounding poisons. But also, even just the poison or feat gives you a sort of basic poison that you can add to your weapons. And you get to ignore poison resistance when you deal poison damage, which you're probably going to be doing because of some of the next upcoming features. So that one's huge, right? Anytime you can get past resistance, I mean, that's especially at higher levels, that has the potential to be a lot of dice. You can apply poison to a weapon or a piece of ammo as a bonus action. Again, huge for rogues because that action economy is so important. I can't be using a whole action to get a couple of extra damage dice. As we're going to see, they're going to be important, but not more important than getting that sneak attack in every round, right? So moving application to a bonus action, A+. You get proficiency with the Poisoner's Kit if you don't already have it. And expending 50 GP of materials, you can create a number of doses of potent poison equal to your proficiency bonus. Once applied to a weapon or piece of ammo, it retains potency for a minute or until you hit with that piece of weapon or ammo. When a creature takes damage from the coated weapon or ammo, they must succeed on a DC 14, I wish that scaled, but it doesn't, DC 14 Constitution saving throw or take 2d8 poison damage and become poisoned until the end of your next turn. So, why do we love this for rogues? We love it because more damage. If you have a DM particularly if you have a DM that lets you stretch the rules of action economy a little bit and use your bonus action to apply poison, like, let's say you're using I guess this wouldn't work on the bracers. All right, forget the last 15 seconds of everything I said. This is important because
Valid.
You're going to be able to you're going to add damage dice. So even when particularly in times when you can't get your sneak in, right? And we're going to talk about some other items that make sure that you can later. But if you don't get your sneak, if you've got a dagger, you're doing a D4, right? Even a magic dagger is D4 plus, let's say we've got our best stats and it's a nice dagger plus 7, right? Which is not bad, but it's not what we could be doing, right? A short sword, maybe we're up to a D6. If you're not rolling that handful of D6s for your sneak attack, at least you get a couple of extra D8s of poison damage, and you have an ongoing effect for your target, the disadvantage on future attack rolls from the poison, right? So in those moments I talked earlier about how it feels so bad when you don't get to do your sneak, because that's like what you're there in combat to do so often. This gives other things without changing any of the actual process of I'm attacking, I'm doing damage, I'm whatever. So I'm a big fan of the Poisoner feat. It makes sure that your rogue feels important every round.
I love that. I have not used the Poisoner feat before, but I am very intrigued by the possibilities. And it's a great reminder to look, while poisons themselves may not be magic items, there is a range of them, as you mentioned, that has multiple kinds of effects that you should remember are a potential special shopping province for you, the rogue. I am excited about your Ring of Evasion. The Ring of Evasion is rare, it requires attunement, but essentially it feels like you get your own little legendary resistance with this. It has 3 charges, it regains 23 expended charges daily at dawn. When you fail a dexterity saving throw while wearing it, you can use your reaction to expend one of its charges to succeed on that saving throw instead. And of course, this is important because you are going to be leaning on your ability to evade as a rogue to take that damage to half damage or that half damage to nothing, which is pretty rad. So it is one of these, you're already very good at things, but why not give it one more step? And your mileage may vary on which forms are most fun, but it's very nice to be like, didn't happen. Ring of Evasion. So there are many more really wonderful picks on this list that I recommend people check out. The 9 Lives Sword was a new to me favorite from this that I think is absolutely beautiful. Pairs with Assassin's great. There's invisible gloves which I thought the point was
Yes.
not that they're invisible, but that for me was I was like, the gloves of thievery are literally invisible. The RP possibilities are fabulous. Fluffing your
Ah,
way through not putting something on your hand because it won't go over the invisible gloves you need them not to know you're wearing. That's a
that's
very fun challenge.
so good.
Not getting affected by a poison because you're secretly wearing gloves and nobody else is, but you can prove it's safe by touching something.
See?
It's again not what those gloves
Exactly.
are for, but there's so many
No, but
possibilities. And of course,
yeah.
yeah. Lots of fun to be had with this, but we also have some picks of our own. Eugenio, what would you add as a fun magic item or your favorite for rogues?
So, I've said several times, right? Rogue action economy is different than a lot of other classes. We want to hit. It feels bad when you don't get to do sneak. We found ways and items to mitigate that to try and either increase your potential for sneak hitting, right? So, like the daggers, you get two, or the poisoner feat, where you still get to roll more dice and do effects, even if you're not doing a handful of d6. But let's just make sure that you get that, right? That you get the chance to attempt a sneak attack, right? Because sometimes it's not about missing, it's just about like there's no ally within 5 feet or whatever. So, my next pick is the Bag of Tricks. This bag, you can pull creatures out of it depending on what color bag you have. I think there's 3 different colors: rust, gray, and something else. And you
Mhm.
can randomly pull out and randomly roll creatures from the bag, and these summoned creatures appear on the battlefield, and they are friendly to you, which is key, and they obey your commands, which is also key. Um, and so what you can do is you can pull these things out and toss them out onto the field. And now, if you don't have an ally, another PC, another party member ally near the target that you're trying to attack, and so wouldn't have sneak attack, now you have, this little weasel that's there, and giving you, maybe not being very effective on its own in combat, but giving you an ally within 5 feet, which allows you to do your sneak attack. I will say the only
Uh,
catch about this is that it's very role dependent. Because sometimes you might have, in fact, a weasel, which probably has 2 hit points, 3 hit points. It's not going to last a whole long time. But you might also draw or roll up a tiger or a brown bear or some hardier animals that will stick around for more than one round. And just give you, again, like, sure, if they're doing extra damage, A plus hurrah. But the point of them being there is that you're going to get that ally there so you can get your sneak attack.
and
Yeah.
I love that they specified that it's ordinary. And that to
Uh-huh.
usually it looks empty, but like whatever to that bag seems like a regular
It's
bag.
fine.
Uh,
Yeah.
but it's full of these fuzzy objects. You can fling them as mentioned, and according to the type of bag you have, you're going to get a large variety of different consequences for
Yeah.
what comes out of there. I think the goat is a fave, useful in
Goat is
battle.
an excellent one.
This one has, I think, many fantastic possibilities, and I love it as a pick for rogues. And I also went kind of off the wall. There are some great things that, well, it's not really off the wall. It's just, I'm going to argue for its inclusion in a best magic items, even though this may never help you win a single fight. A charlatan's die.
Ooh.
I just think people should be aware of this one. If this is the type of rogue you are, there are canonical loaded dice in Dungeons and Dragons that you can find and have and use on your enemies. It's a common magical item. It's still, a magical item. And it requires attunement, which I love because it won't work for other
Two.
people, a key element of
Yes.
loaded dice.
Correct.
Whenever you roll it, you can control which number it rolls. And the possibilities are very, very fun because then the locus of challenge goes from random gambling to you and your DM working out, I imagine, increasingly complex sets of tests and scenarios to see whether you are successfully
Yeah.
able to navigate an NPC into needing a certain role, which is possible to do and potentially a fun challenge that should scale with whether they're naturally gamblers, whether
Oh
they like you,
yeah.
whether you found a good angle to approach for the thing that they want. But if you can do the work of getting them into that scenario and using your skills and abilities to get there, then the rest
Hmm.
is taken care of by your charlatans die.
Oh, I like that. Oh, I like that a lot. That's very fun. Yeah. Yeah.
So in and out there are ways to pack your toolkit as a rogue, and of course, the fun of the charlatans die is then as a DM, like, do you find a way that that is swapped out on you when you most need it? Not in a
Mhm.
mean way, in a fun challenge way, is it, you've made it through a tournament trying to get contact FaceTime with a noble or something, and then circumstances are going to force you to get through this last one without it, and one of your spellcaster buddies is going to have to find the least obtrusive way to get you through the final round of uh in-universe dice game of your
Yeah.
choice. I wanted to say craps. That's technically the name of the game. I'm just uh I'm not
Yeah.
swearing at you. Um Look, it's the guys and dolls fan in me. I'm like, yeah, dice rolls, they're very important.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so these close out our official picks for the bag of tricks. Is there anything else, Eugenio, that you would want to shout out, or philosophically, as we are shopping for our rogue, that we want to look out for in choosing the best pairings for us?
Yeah, I think you just want to know what kind of campaign you're playing in and why you want a magic item. Do you want to do kind of bouncy, off the wall, chaotic, cool stuff? Then you want things like the bag of tricks. You want things like the cloak that we talked about, right? Do you want to? Is your game a little bit more like crunchy important, combat important? Are you just trying to like really make sure that you're ready to go in combat? Then maybe you want to look at things like the Ring of Evasion, right? Or and a lot of the time these items are quickly ignored because there's so many cooler things, right? But as we've talked about for rogue, it's all about getting that one hit in. You only need one, but often you only get one. So things like enchanted weapons, right? Like +1, +2, +3 weapons that just increase your probability to get that hit in are really useful, right? They're useful for everyone, of course, but because we have, like we've talked about with the rogue, a limited number of tries, often more limited than other classes, and that really explosive single hit, anything you can do to make sure that happens each round is, if that's the type of game, type of character you're trying to build, is worth it.
Yeah, I love that advice based on type of game that you get. Especially since, it's very fun to work around resource challenges. If you're in a crunch year,
Mhm.
we actually are going to have a bunch of fights in a day. I'm going to need to make some careful choices. It becomes very crucial to see what you can allot to making those transitions easier. Um, and do shop around for magic items. There are many, many wonderful options. I also, at the other end of the scale from the charlatans die, I love the Ioun stones that come in many varieties, but
Yeah.
several of them are just sort of general, you're better at stuff,
Mhm.
which can be very useful for the already very good at stuff. Like, it is nice to have a little boost that takes you from probably to almost certainly on your adventures. So please check out the picks that are in the article on best magic items for rogues on dndbeyond.com, link running through chat and in the description. Let us know what your favorites that you think should make the list are, because that is half the
Yeah.
fun of having these conversations. And Eugenio, where can people find you?
You can check me out on Twitter and on Twitch at DM Jazzy Hands. I'm live on my channel Tuesdays and Thursdays, playing games, having fun. I also have a D&D podcast called The Last Refuge. We are currently heading towards our 10th and final season, so we've gone bi-weekly for the summer. But you can check us out at DND Last Refuge on Twitter. And what else? Monday nights, I am over on the C&E Games Twitch channel playing in a familiar quest, Latia Jatakis as our DM, an adventure of 4 familiars who have been separated from their conjuring adventures and are having adventures of their own. So that's where you can find me in the next couple of weeks.
I, of course, am Amy Dallen. You can always find me here on D&D Beyond, where we're talking about new things coming, standard things coming, and advice for pulling off the greatest rogue moves you can think of in Dungeons & Dragons.